to Weekends at the Chapel. I have Chris McCouthie with me here today, and we're continuing our series of talking about relationships, and we've got a bit of a twist today. So we've talked a bit about marriage and other things like that. We're actually going to talk about relationships in the workplace. So when I think about that, I realise, wow, we spend a lot of time in the workplace with people. And tell us why having good relationships in the workplace is important to you. Actually, before we do that, tell us what you actually do. What do you do in the workplace?
Okay, in the workplace, in the construction industry, my role is basically to help people come up with better houses, better spaces for their existing homes, add more space, design houses for you. That's what I do.
So it's good to have a good relationship with your clients after it, that they like their house.
Oh yeah. You better make sure that you have a good relationship, because you never know. You'll meet them at the mall and it will either be a smile or a frown.
So now, obviously, being an architect and you design houses, but you also work with teams and there's all sorts of different relationships that you have. Why are relationships important in the workplace, or need to be focused on, and not just the product?
And I like what you said, Mark, that the workplace, if you look at it, we spend, give or take, around 40 hours a week at work. Between Monday and Friday, that's generally around 8 hours every single day. You are in a workspace. That's nearly 30%. Actually, about 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours, you're asleep. So of the remaining hours, the majority of that, you're actually at work. You spend time with people, the people you work with, the people who you meet, and quite a bit of the time you also spend to and fro work. So therefore you realize that these are people you will be interacting with on a daily basis. Some you'll interact once in a while, some you'll interact once and that's all. But then these are the relationships then which end up defining who are you. These are the people who know you. These are the people who see you when there's pressure, when there's no pressure. These are people who see you every moment in different aspects of your life. And how do you interact with them? How do you relate with them? And I think the aspect of looking at relationships at work helps us then to make use of that substantial part of our time in a much better way. How then do we make it fruitful? How do we make it effective with the people who we spend most of our time with? And that's why I think it's important for us to look at relationships at work.
Because oftentimes our focus when it comes to relationships is we just zone in on our home relationships, and I just have a question about that. So if you have poor relationships at work, or you're struggling at work, how does that affect your home relationships?
I think the fact that you spend so much time at work, what happens? Chances are you bring that home. If you've been stressed off at work, you'll bring that stress home. If work is working well, you'll come all bubbly and full of joy at home. And vice versa. If it's not working at home, you carry it to work.
Yeah.
So it ends up being one coming to the other coming to the other. It keeps merging one into the other.
I think that's probably the big thing for us in this whole journey, was for us all to actually learn how important relationships are and how we are relational beings.
Yes.
Just a question I have on the workplace. Can we talk about the types of relationships that you have in the workplace? So I know there's a book I read a while ago called The 360 Degree Leader, and it acknowledged that there's relationships up, so people that you have to report to.
Yep.
You've got your peers that you're sideways, and people that report to you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your place in your workplace and how you engage in all those relationships? We'd like some tips on how to deal with our boss, how to deal with those we lead, and our friends and our peers.
Yeah. I actually like that illustration, and I think that's by John Maxwell, when he talks about 360 operation, up, down, and sideways. But before we even look at that in itself, I broadly look at relationships in the workplace in two main categories. One, internal and external. There is the organization where you are based at, your primary workspace, for example. All right, and that's where you spend the bulk of your time with the people around you and all that, and that's where we will focus on. But there's an aspect of that workplace where many times we don't touch, when you're dealing with the people outside. And those are, for example, where I am in the office, I will be dealing with people in the council, I'll be dealing with subcontractors, suppliers. There are people, some of them I've never met them. I only know their voices. I only have their numbers. And at times, those kind of relationships can be very transactional because I'm calling you, I need this from you. Give me this information, that's it. Is there anything else which can come from that? Maybe nothing much. But look at this, Mark. You're talking with someone, someone you've never met, someone you may never meet. But how you talk with them could actually change their day. It's just more than that. How are you? How's your day? All right. Thank you for your service. I really appreciate what you've told me. You could be making their day at that particular point. So in as much as the external relationship is very transactional, we have opportunity to actually speak into it and better it by our attitudes, by what we say, because all I'm expecting is this and this. But I have an opportunity to go an extra step and be more gracious, talk better, be more appreciative. And that's out there. But let's come within. Because
before we come within, have you got an example where obviously you've engaged with someone and it hasn't started well, and you're in that moment and that relationship has tension? What do you do then? How do you turn that around when you've had nothing to do? It's a transactional relationship, like you said.
Yeah.
What would you do to turn that relationship around in that moment?
Okay, actually, I just remember someone called the office and I happened to pick up the call. But he was like very antagonistic. And I felt we are not the best people to help him out. So I explained to him, I'm sorry, I don't think we're in a position to help you out. So he was not amused about that. So he ranted and ranted. So I told him, can we just recap what we've just discussed? And he didn't want to hear it. So he ended up calling me names and doing all that. And he hung up on me. Fair enough. 2 minutes, he calls back. So he called back and I happened to pick up the call again. And he said, are you the one I talked to? I said, yes. Can I speak to your supervisor? I told him, no problem. What is it about? I would like to complain about you. Okay, that's okay. Do you mind if I take the complaints so that I can pass over the call to him with the complaints? And that took him back a bit. So he went through the complaints and I wrote them down. Literally, I wrote them down and I said, okay, that's fair enough. Let me hand you over. So I handed him over to my manager. But after the whole thing happened with my manager, so my manager told me what he said. He said, I didn't even think he would pass me over to you. So that caught him off guard. So when he talked to the manager, he was all mellow. I was like, oh. But then I realized the initial point, it was so easy for me to get worked up because he was getting worked up. Okay. It was so easy for me to, and I don't know what was happening. I don't know what's happening in his space. But it's easy for me to respond kind in kind, but I have an opportunity to extend grace, to be gracious, to be kind. Yes, you feel offended. I'm sorry you felt offended. That was not my intention. But I still stand by my that I'm not able to help you. And I will pass you over to my manager. Then you can actually express these complaints as you've given me here to him.
Sounds a bit like Jesus. We're not going to do an eye for an eye or a tooth for tooth anymore. What we're going to do is if someone's going hard at you, we're just going to say, here, have something extra. Or here. Yeah, it's interesting. So let's talk about the internal then. They're the relationships that are ongoing relationships.
Yeah.
And tell us about those relationships.
True. And once again, I'll refer back to that aspect of that John Maxwell talks about. There are those you report to. Assume you're here at the center. There are those who are above you, and there are those who could be below you, and there are those who are beside you at the same level. All right? And you could be at any point. You could be the one at the top, you could be the one at the middle, you can be anywhere in this spectrum. Yeah. So let's look at each of them and see how do the relationships in between work. And I think if I was to start off, I will look at how do we relate with those whom we report to. Let's say a boss, someone who is senior than you. And I thought about it today actually and realized, anytime I'm in a workspace, the person I'm reporting to, they have a particular standard, either because of the organization or certain aspects that they have said, this is what we expect of you. And I can do that and tick off everything clearly and be like, I've met my obligation to that. But there are certain things which can never be, let me say, legislated. respect, honor, submission. Those are terms which, in our current age, we don't like hearing them too much because we say, I'm here to work, give me my job description, I need to do that. And if you do that, technically you've met your end of the bargain. But are we called to much more than that? Because you're the person in authority over me. Am I going to submit to that authority? Am I going to respect you? Am I going to choose to, just act honorably because you are my senior? And that can take very many different kinds of forms. I'm not just doing this because you've asked me to do it. I'm doing it because I've also chosen to go extra beyond what is expected of me. And at times I look at that and say, isn't that then what makes the difference between us and everybody else? I know it's very easy for the world to say, and it's okay. We are not supposed to bite the hand that feeds you.
Yep.
All right? But you can do that by just ticking the boxes.
Yep.
But what if you go a bit extra? Do I get to work on time because I'm expected to, or do I get to work on time because that's what integrity demands of me?
Okay. Yeah.
When I'm at work, am I using my time well when my boss is there? When he's not there, will I do something else? My standard should be higher than even my boss.
Your standard should be higher than your boss.
Should be higher than what they expect of me. And by doing that, that's honor.
Yeah.
That is respecting that authority. Because I would look at it even from a Christian perspective, that it's not my boss I'm actually choosing to submit only to. It is God himself. Because God has instituted authority. And the person I'm reporting to is just a representative of God's authority.
Yeah.
So by doing that, I'm actually honoring God.
It's interesting you talk about that. Oftentimes, I know when I think of leadership, John Maxwell says this as well. He's got his P's of leadership, and the first one he says is position, and he said that's the lowest form of leadership. And
Exactly.
And oftentimes you're in that middle space and you're answering up to someone, and what you're saying is that you can show integrity, you can set a culture in an organisation, and it doesn't have to come from the top.
Yeah.
It actually can come from the middle.
Exactly. That's true.
Yeah.
And actually, it's something we said, I was talking to someone actually the other day and said, if, for example, I am not the boss, can I be the kind of employee today that I will want my employees to be when I'm the boss? If I can't do that, chances are I will not be a boss one at that particular time.
Yeah.
All right? So you're looking at someone above you. That's the people who you're reporting to. Let's look, for example, to another kind of relationship, the relationship with your peers.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of people who you spend most of your time with on any given day. The people you will chat about, how was your day? You talk about kids, you talk about everything else because you're generally at their level. They're the people you can easily confide to, but they're the same people who can hurt you the most because you talk about everything.
Yes. Okay.
You can talk about everything. And those are important relationships because, yes, they are good. Of course, we have limits. And there's that whole legal aspect about what you talk about, how you make use of work time and everything about that. But let me just touch on maybe one or two aspects about which can happen at that level. Especially if you're in a big organization, you'll tend to find your peers are the people who, they should be your partners, let me call it that. You're working together to fulfill something at the same level. But they are potentially the people you compete most with.
Yeah.
They're the people who you will actually be fighting with. Because the higher you go, the less the positions. So it's not everybody at this level who will be going up.
Yeah.
And that introduces an interesting aspect to this relationship here. And I know in Australia there's this aspect of, you've heard of it, the tall poppy syndrome.
Yes. We love to cut down the tall poppies, make everyone equal so that we get to the top. No, that's not how it goes.
So that we all stay
equal.
here.
Yes.
So that we all stay equal here.
Yeah.
But if you look at that kind of a thing, what actually is it doing? Is it a selfish one? Is it one which is, because you are better, let me cut you off so that you remain at my level. Instead of me looking at that and saying, wow, you're doing that better. Can I learn from you? Can I cheer you on? Because in life, there are those who will always be better than you.
Yeah.
And maybe my role in that relationship is to cheer you on and support you, not cut you down.
So can I give you an analogy?
Yeah.
And I want to know what you would do in this situation.
Oh.
So we're peers. Pretend we're peers in the workplace. Pretend just a brief second that I know how to draw something. We're in the architectural world, and you've just discovered something on your computer which is going to save so much time to get work done. A part of the software you go, this is amazing. Do you share that with me, or do you keep that to yourself so that you can get the job done quicker than me? What would you do?
Now that will depend what is my goal. If I'm here and I look at you as my competitor, I'm not sharing that with you. But that means I'm being selfish. I'm thinking about myself. I'm not thinking the greater good. If I'm thinking about only myself, I'll keep that to myself, use that to shine, and I get to the next level. But if I'm thinking not about myself, I'm thinking about the organization, I'm thinking about you. You will benefit from this. If you benefit from this, I benefit from this, we all benefit from this. It's all for the common good. Then I will share.
Yeah.
And that changes our relationship. It's no longer competitive. Not say it's healthy competition. We are bettering each other. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
And it has been said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if I'm going to, will I want you to share if it was you who got that? I would want you to share with me.
Yeah.
So I have to think of it that way. This is not just for myself. This is for us.
Yeah.
This has to be the greater us. And I believe once we stop thinking from a very selfish perspective in the workplace, it changes our relationships. I have to ask myself, how am I making this environment better for everybody who is here? That we can have a better environment to enhance our relationships. How can I make my colleagues, my peers, their day better than anybody else's?
Yeah.
You know, how can I make it that you don't leave the office and I'll be the topic of discussion at home? Negatively because of how much stress I put on your life.
Yeah.
But rather be there to encourage you, to support you.
Yeah.
Give you the shoulder that hopefully you can also give me.
Yeah.
And even if you don't give me that shoulder, may I be the one to be able to offer that shoulder. All right?
I think people are going to want to work with you.
I'm working on my bit.
Well, we're about to find out, because tell us about the ones that you're the boss of. The one that now we're talking about, you've got a position of authority about those relationships.
Yeah. And that becomes an interesting one because someone once said that power can easily corrupt. Once you have authority, once you have, whether it's positional power or you have people under you, that can easily be abused. And what we see on the other side, we see that can lead to exploitation. We can see to even abuse, actually. We can see that. But then, what is a challenge to us? And what will I say about that kind of relationship? We have a chance to encourage. We have a chance to pull others up. And yet, we even have a higher call than that. Here's a story which was given. 12 guys were selected to be part of the team, the A team. All right? And these guys, from many guys who are around, 12 guys to be the A team. And then once they're moving around and doing their thing, then they start having an argument amongst themselves. Who amongst us is the greater? Is the greatest? Can you imagine? You're already part of the team and you're arguing who is greater. But then, an interesting thing was thrown into the mix. The greatest is the one who is the least, the one who shall serve. Now that changes, because what does that introduce? Servant leadership.
Yeah.
You don't lead those who are beneath you by power or by position, but by serving.
Yeah.
So it's by going down that you actually come up. And that, I believe, that becomes a very interesting lesson for us to learn, especially to the people who who report to us. Let us exercise servant leadership. Let that be what defines our relationship. that they are not here to serve us. We are actually here to serve them. And as we do that, it's for everybody's benefit.
Yeah.
We're here to encourage them. And also remember, you were once there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that becomes a sobering thing to always think, I was there.
Yeah.
At one point, I was at the bottom. So how will I want to have been treated? Can I treat someone the way I wanted to be treated then?
Yeah. It's good. It's really good. If you didn't get the analogy, he was talking about Jesus, and Jesus is a pretty awesome leader. Look, I'm really thankful for you to spend this time with us today. Really, really thankful. Just to finish, what are your dreams at the moment when it comes to the workplace for yourself? What are you thinking about in the future? Because how long have you been in Australia now?
This is going to be our third year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think every time I think about the workplace, for me, I look at it as an opportunity, as a space where we get an opportunity to utilize our gift. It's an opportunity to get paid to do what you love.
Yeah.
And I look at that as being a space that gives us an opportunity to interact, make better spaces, develop friendships, develop relationships, and actually further the kingdom of God through the marketplace, through the workspace. So what is my hope? My hope and my dream is just to see the workplace changed. It stops being this place where on Monday you wake up here and you're thinking, oh no, it's another Monday. I know there's a point in my life by the time it gets to Sunday afternoon, I get into depression mode because I'm thinking about Monday. But can you imagine you're waking up on Monday excited for yet another opportunity to continue doing what you love doing?
Yeah.
Because I love the people there. I love the people I work with. I love supporting the purpose and the mission of where I am. I love the people who are working in my team, that I can support them. That's what I want to do. To wake up with joy and the workplace to be a vibrant space, a community space.
Well, mate, thank you. We all now want to work with you, for you, above you. Yeah, we just want to be around you because
I'm a work in progress.
because you're going to make life better. Thank you for tuning in and watching Weekends at the Chapel. Thank you, Chris, for sharing your heart and teaching us heaps about what it means to have great relationships in the workplace.
Thanks.
Blessings. Have a great week in the workplace.
See ya.